Hi, welcome to my channel Cloud with Girish. In my previous video, I demonstrated how the DeepSeek R1 distill model can be used with Amazon Bedrock by storing it in the S3 bucket and importing it before invoking it via AWS Lambda and API gateway. In this video, I will explore a similar and more efficient approach using the fully managed DeepSeek R1 model with Amazon Bedrock, AWS Lambda, and API Gateway in a serverless environment. This eliminates the need to manually store and import the model, allowing you to integrate DeepSeek R1 into your applications without managing any infrastructure. Amazon announced support for the fully managed DeepSeek R1 model in Amazon Bedrock on March 10, 2025. With this update, you no longer need to download the model, store it in Amazon S3, or use Bedrock custom model feature. Everything is managed seamlessly by AWS. Before diving in, let's review the architecture diagram to understand how these components interact. So here is the architecture diagram. We have a user or a consuming app that's invoking the API hosted via API gateway. It's a secure API, so it's using the API key and usage plan, and then it's integrated with the Lambda function. Lambda function is written in Python Boto3 library. It's integrated with CloudWatch for the logging, and then it's invoking the Bedrock model, and Bedrock model is using the managed DeepSeek R1 model. I'm going to use the infrastructure as architecture approach to build the code, and that's why we have SAM CloudFormation change step noted here. Prerequisite for this workshop is familiarity with the AWS Management Console, basic understanding of AWS CLI, basic understanding of Amazon Bedrock, basic understanding of Lambda and API Gateway, and some understanding of AWS SAM. Let's get started. We're going to look at an intro to Amazon Bedrock. We'll look at an overview of DeepSeek R1 model. We'll request the access to the R1 model, and then we'll validate the model using Amazon Bedrock Playground. Now, since I'm building a Lambda function, we're going to review the AWS SAM template, and we'll look at the code behind the Lambda function. And then we'll use the SAM framework to build the code locally and then invoke it locally before deploying it to the AWS cloud. Once it's deployed, then I'll use Postman to validate the API and review the responses. We can also look at the CloudWatch log, and towards the end, we'll clean up the resources, which is basically deleting the Lambda function and API and any associated IAM role. Let's look at introduction to Amazon Bedrock. Amazon Bedrock is a fully managed service that provides access to a variety of foundation models, including Anthropic Cloud, AI21 Jurassic 2, Stability AI, Amazon Titan, and others. As a serverless offering from Amazon, Bedrock enables seamless integration with popular foundation models. It also allows you to privately customize those models with your own data using AWS tools, eliminating the need to manage any infrastructure. Additionally, Bedrock supports the import of custom models. Let's look at overview of DeepSeek R1 model. The DeepSeek R1 model is a text-to-text language model designed to handle a wide range of natural language processing tasks. It excels in transforming input text into meaningful and contextually relevant output, making it ideal for tasks such as text generation, summarization, and question answering. As a fully managed model on Amazon Bedrock, DeepSeek R1 simplifies integration by removing the need for manual deployment and infrastructure management. It processes input text and generates coherent, context-aware responses, which can be leveraged in chatbot, customer support system, content creation, and more. Before you can use the model, you need to request the access to the model. To request the access, let's navigate to Amazon Bedrock console and select DeepSeek R1 and click on Modify Access. From there, you can request model access for DeepSeek R1. Review the model access request and then submit it. Once you submit it, you should get the access guaranteed. It may take few minutes to refresh the view, but once it's guaranteed, you should see the message that access is guaranteed and it's ready for use. Once you have access to the model, you can start using it via Bedrock Playground. So here I'm providing a very simple prompt that please suggest 3 places to visit in NYC. And as you notice, model is processing my prompt request and providing me options, the places to visit: Statue of Liberty, Central Park, Times Square, and it also providing some additional points about these places. Now I know that I have access to the model and I can use it. So next I'm going to invoke it through the API, and I'm going to build the Lambda function and API using the infrastructure as code approach using AWS SAM, which is Serverless Application Model. So let's build the Lambda function and the REST API using AWS SAM. The API will invoke the Lambda function, and the Lambda function has the code to invoke Bedrock, and then Bedrock will use the manage DeepSeek R1 model to provide the response to the prompt. This is the flow, if you recall, that we have in our architecture diagram. Now when resources are being built using ISE approach via AWS SAM, all resources are defined in the template.yaml file. So next, let's look at our template.yaml file. This is the file that is defining the resources. And here we have like 2 primary resources, which is GB Chatbot API, which is basically defining the API and all the configuration around it, that hey, what kind of endpoint I'm using, what's the name of the API, what stage I'm using, also defining the API key and the usage parameter. So this is our API definition. And then we have another resource that I'm defining here, which is actually the Lambda function. So here I have GB Chatbot Lambda function, and again I'm defining the runtime. I'm also defining the inference configuration that is required for the Bedrock API, and of course I have Python runtime and some other parameters and the configuration like timeout, the memory size, the permission policy, and so on. So next, let's look at the code behind the Lambda function. So it's a very simple code. It's a Lambda handler. I have some logging here that I wanted to log. Of course, when the function is going in production, you probably don't want that many log, but this is a development and I want to see what kind of event I'm getting and what kind of HTTP method I'm getting. So there are more prompts and more loggers here than usual. And then of course I have the code here, which is consuming the inference parameters and invoking the Bedrock API and passing the prompt that I'm providing. And then once I get the response back, then I'm returning the response. Now that we have our template file and we have our Lambda function code, so we can build this code using the AWS SAM. Very simple command, simply SAM build, and that will build the code locally. And of course, your environment need to be set up for it with AWS CLI and so on. But once your environment is set up, then you can run the SAM build command. Once build is successful, then I can invoke the function locally using the SAM local invoke command. One important point to keep in consideration that at this point, code is not yet deployed in AWS Cloud. AWS SAM provides the ability to run the function code locally. So here is the command SAM local invoke, the function name, and then I can pass the test JSON file. So here I am invoking the function, and here is my command SAM local invoke. GB chatbot function. That's my function name. And then I'm passing the test event. And that test event actually has the prompt, right? So here, as you can see, is invoking the function, it's putting the logs out. All logs from the functions are being printed, as well as the output response will be printed here. Now that I know that function is working without error and providing the response per the design and use case, I can deploy it in the AWS cloud. And to deploy that, I will simply run another SAM command, which is SAM deploy. And when I run this, it's going to ask me some information like the stack name and which region I want to deploy and so on. And then once I provide all that information, then it will create a change stack that will be deployed to the AWS cloud post my confirmation. Now, once this deployment is completed, then that means I have a deployed API which is integrated with Lambda, which is integrated with Amazon Bedrock, and Amazon Bedrock is using an underlying LLM foundation model. So with that, I can use that API endpoint to start invoking the function. So that's what I'm doing here with the Postman. I'm passing the API endpoint and I'm providing my prompt, and then all the flow is getting executed from API to Lambda to Bedrock to foundation model, and then I'm getting a response back. Now remember that API is secured by the key, so if I do not provide the API key, then I will get a 403 forbidden message, but I'm not getting that message right now because I have provided the secure key to invoke this API. Let's look at another prompt. This is similar to what I passed earlier in the Bedrock playground. So I'm saying, hey, please suggest 3 places to visit in NYC. And as you can see, the model is providing me a similar response that I was seeing in the playground. So I'm getting the name of like 3 places to visit and some detail around that. So once done with this exercise, ensure to delete all the resources created so that these resources do not incur charges impacting overall cloud cost and budget. Since these resources were built and deployed using AWS SAM, these can be deleted using AWS SAM command. So the command is SAM delete, and you can also delete the resources via AWS console. It's just that you will have to delete there one by one. But if you have built the resources using an infrastructure as code approach using SAM, then you simply can say SAM delete and it will start deleting the entire stack that is created. So in this workshop, I demonstrated how to use the managed DeepSeek model with Amazon Bedrock. Since this is a serverless offering, there was no infrastructure that I needed to provision to use this model. I used the AWS CLI, the management console, AWS SAM, and Postman to validate the API. For this solution, I used Python Boto 3 to create an API integrated with Bedrock via a Lambda function. I hope you found this tutorial both helpful and informative. I'm constantly working on new content covering various AWS topics, so please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the Cloud with Girish channel. Your support helps me continue creating valuable AWS tutorials and workshops. Stay tuned for more exciting content. Thank you.